Is this one of the best mini handhelds on the market? Let's find out. Greetings, Retro Zoltan here. Up for review today is the Anbernic RG Nano, another mini handheld that pretty much competes directly with the Funkey S retro gaming console, a system released back in late 2020. With so many mini handhelds sold today, it's not surprising to me that Anbernic jumped in on the action also. Now, this was released back in June, and I sat on this for months, sadly enough, but I learned a lot by watching other people looking at this and enjoying it also. I believe I spent $64 on it back then, and it still goes on average for the same price on AliExpress, so at least I have no regrets there. The box it came in is quite tantalizing to open, and to be honest, I have no idea how I held off for so long after looking at this. Per the usual, in Anbernic fashion, it's packaged rather nicely. It comes with an attachment to make a keychain, directions that I somehow lost already, and a USB charging cable neatly stuffed into this little white box here. A nice surprise I wasn't expecting was an audio conversion cable, which tells me that the Nano has no room for an audio jack. Pulling out the Nano, I'm already impressed with the weight of it. And the metal case is a nice touch. It's Anbernic every step of the way. It's certainly smaller than the original Game Boy, even smaller than the Mii Mini, but not horribly small like the Thummy. I just can't stop touching it and feeling the cool surface. It's just awesome. It's one of those handhelds you just want to show people because you know they're going to be amazed. I got mine in purple, and to be honest, I have no idea why. No offense to Grimace, but it's not my favorite color. They also have a magenta and a blue that are so good looking it's tempting to buy those as well. I think I might have a problem. Looking at the front of the device, it's designed to look like the Game Boy DMG. Nothing wrong with that, although I think it's kind of odd that the front speaker is fake. I guess they couldn't put a real one in there? Maybe it wouldn't have been great having it under your thumb anyway, so no big loss. The candy-looking ABXY buttons feel great. Surprisingly good. But they're so tiny, I know my big-ass fingers are going to have issues here. So your results may vary. The D-pad, even though it's small, feels pretty good here. A good sensation of the conductive rubber underneath that I'm not upset about. The start and select buttons are so tiny, but certainly usable. There is so little room on the faceplate, in fact, they had to abbreviate those buttons' functions, which I found pretty amusing. The screen is a 240 by 240 1.54-inch IPS display that I can't wait to see when I turn this thing on. Looking at the bottom, we see the speaker, and to the left we see where we can attach the keychain. I'm hesitant to ever let this near my keys, but here goes. The other side has a start button that I believe is also an option button when running. The button is inset to prevent accidental pushes, which is a good feature, but probably inconvenient being an option button also. I kind of wish there was a separate button for that, but I'm just being picky. Also on the side is an SD slot already populated with its OS and games. I believe most places will give you an option of 32 gig, 64, and 128. The only other thing this has is a USB recharging and/or connection port to the top, as well as micro-switch trigger buttons. I'm super picky on triggers, but these feel extremely appropriate for this sort of handheld. I'm kind of addicted to pressing them, so this may be my new thing to drive people bananas. So let's finally turn this system on and see what we have here. It seems like an odd decision, but you will always encounter a clock application when you start or restart the system. I'm not sure if anyone cares about a clock, but you can easily move on by pushing the start button. Expect to see this clock all the time. After the clock, your first boot up will most likely bring you to the default G menu 2X menu style, which to be honest, I didn't think I'd see again. I liked it years ago, but I'm not sure what I think of it now. It's a bit messy to see these days. With this menu, you can choose the system you want to play and go from there. It's not easy to navigate through everything, but you get a few interesting options to mess with, including a music player and a video player if you want to watch movies on this thing. If this style of front end is not your thing, you can easily press the option button on the side and choose Set Launcher to Retro FE. You do miss the extra options though, because this pretty much turns the Nano into a game player only, and that's it. No more screwing around. In my opinion, this is better, but if you don't like it, you can always go back by pushing option again and then set launcher to G menu 2X. With the Anbernic Nano, using the included firmware, you can play the following systems: Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo Entertainment System, Super Nintendo, Sega Game Gear, Master System, and Genesis. Also included is TurboGrafx 16, Neo Geo Pocket, Poke Mini, WonderSwan, and PlayStation. A fine eye that is sensitive to these things may see a bit of choppiness in the backgrounds on certain systems. But overall, I don't think it's a huge deal breaker for this sort of thing. Everything 8-bit and under works perfect, while 16-bit games can sometimes cause the Nano to struggle. Considering how small this thing is, I was surprised by the power of this little device, and it certainly plays some, but certainly not all, PlayStation games without an issue. Even more interesting is the more taxing the game is, the hotter the Anbernic Nano metal seems to get. This makes me a bit nervous because I know they're using the battery as a heat sink, and if you're paranoid as me about overheating lithium batteries, then you'll be letting it cool down often before continuing. Speaking of batteries, the Nano can go for about 2 to 3 hours on a single charge of its 1050 milliamp hour battery, which isn't too bad. There's no disputing that using this platform to play classic games for extended periods of time is completely impractical and uncomfortable if you don't have tiny hands. So, if you're looking for a portable that you can use for hours a day, the RG Nano is not for you. I tend to play on it for little more than 10 to 20 minutes at a time. Further testing the Nano, I found that the adapter to use the headphones works pretty well. It looks funny and I wish they added an audio jack, but it's better than nothing, I guess. I really did like being able to connect the Nano directly to my computer to charge it, as well as just to allow access to it to mess with the files. This, of course, got me curious about what else I could do with this thing. What else could the G Menu 2X front end provide? Adding music was easy enough, but when I got to adding video, it was harder than I expected. I was just hoping popping an MP4 in the video folder was good enough, but it just crawls. I tried using Handbrake to reduce the movie size, which helped, but then the video just seemed off sync with the audio, which was a worse fate. I may have to do a little more homework to figure out how to do this correctly. I'm sure it's possible, so if I find out, I'll put it in the comments below. But if you find out before me, please let me know. In the past, with this type of OS, there were always OPK files that you could add for more emulators and standalone games. However, when I tried adding some, they just didn't seem to show up, which was pretty frustrating. I did find that there was an upgrade for the Nano which brings it up to 1.01, but it still didn't exactly help me with my OPK file problem. But it did add a few things. With version 1.01, more systems were added, including Final Burn Alpha, Pico 8, MAME, and Virtual Boy. I have to admit, getting Pico 8 to work on this thing was quite an exciting thing to have. It just seems to be made for this thing, you know? With this edition, I was loving this little guy way more than I thought I would. Even more fun was that version 1.01 added a few standalone games, including a watered-down Minecraft, which I found pretty fun. Everything I read told me to put the OPKs in certain folders, but it wasn't working. So, maybe, just maybe, there was a custom firmware out there to handle this. With little effort, I was able to find people giving high claim to Drum 78's custom firmware that really makes you hate the original. Once I installed it, I realized how much better it was to see that damn clock go away. And OPKs that I wanted to install suddenly showed up, and I was able to play them. Even better was that under the Retro FE loader, they show up under native games, and there was Doom. Hell yes, now we're talking. Drum 78's custom also makes games play even smoother, and also has a favorites option per system, which is something I always like to see. Rumor is Black Seraph is going to make a tiny garlic OS for this thing, which will even make this thing more attractive, but I think that's been delayed for now. I'll be keeping my eye out for that for sure, but honestly, I'm pretty happy with what I have right now. Is this the best mini handheld? It's hard to say. I don't have one, but there are those that feel the Funkey S retro gaming console does a better job than the Nano. I plan on getting one eventually, but it's a bit different. If you're a big fan of Anbernic and like the look and feel of the aluminum case, this may be what you're looking for. That is, if you want a tiny handheld in your life. Also, if you're considering a system this small and this powerful, in the works also is a product called the GKD Pixel that may just blow the Nano out of the water. But we'll just have to wait and see. Just one more thing before I forget. If you plan on using this as a keychain, you might want to consider a case to keep it from banging around. Anbernic does sell one, but honestly I don't like the look of it very much, and instead ordered one special from Pigalope Custom Crochet. It protects my Nano perfectly, so I'm a bit less nervous now if I hear this thing banging around. As for me, a reviewer and a collector, the Anbernic RG Nano I'll be keeping in my collection. Will I use it as a keychain? Hell no. Will I be bringing it on me on long trips somewhere? Maybe. Personally, I can see pulling this out on lunch break, or waiting for something to compile, or waiting for my Windows update to finish. You can easily bang out a few Kirby levels and get back to it. A quick gaming fix for the retro gaming addicts out there. Hey, I can quit anytime, okay? And that's all I have to say about the Anbernic RG Nano. It's a fun little device, but I wouldn't take it too seriously. Thanks for watching. Thank you everyone for your support. I appreciate you more than you know, and I'll see you next time. Bye.